Diana was an especially dark moment for the royal family. Her fairy tale romance and marriage ended in scandal with a messy divorce and then death. Diana killed in a traffic accident in Paris. The royal family grieved privately, but there was growing anger in Britain that the monarchy was out of touch, detached and aloof. The Queen quickly returned to London from her vacation home to pay tribute to Diana and face a challenge to modernise the monarchy.
I, for one, believe there are lessons to be drawn from her life and from the extraordinary and moving reaction to her death.
Queen Elizabeth set out to change the face of monarchy. It would be more open, compassionate, in touch with a changing British public.
Institutions, which in turn must continue to evolve if they are to provide effective beacons of trust and unity.
She embraced many changes, including the marriage of her grandson Prince William to commoner Kate Middleton, and Prince Harry to the American actress Meghan Markle. She celebrated the birth of great-grandchildren, including Prince George, third in line to the throne. To mark the Queen's Diamond Jubilee, the nation joined in a pageant not seen for decades. And in 2015, she surpassed her great-great-grandmother, Queen Victoria, to become the longest-reigning British monarch in history. Queen Elizabeth continued to inspire her subjects and people around the globe. During the COVID-19 global pandemic, her words helped everyone keep calm and carry on.
This time we join with all nations across the globe in a common endeavour, using the great advances of science and our instinctive compassion to heal. We will succeed, and that success will belong to every one of us.
In April of 2021, the Queen's beloved husband, Prince Philip, died. Her companion, her confidant, and her husband for 70 years. In her words, he was her strength and stay. She carried on, as always, with her royal duties, serving her country and people. Queen Elizabeth, a monarch for all times.
4, 2, 1.
Keir Simmons reporting for us at CNBC. Queen Elizabeth dead today at the age of 96. The announcement came just about 6:30 in the evening, London time. The Queen had been at her summer home in Balmoral, where she has spent all summers for decades on end now. It was a rainy afternoon with intermittent showers throughout, but well-wishers had gathered since the early morning notice or the noontime notice from her doctors that he was concerned for her health. Soon, members of the senior royals began to arrive in Balmoral. 4 arrived by jet to a nearby airport and then went by caravan over to Balmoral. Prince William driving the car, Prince Andrew therein, along with 2 others. Prince Charles had been with his mother throughout. We're told that he had been at Balmoral overnight. And now Charles, the king consort, as of this moment, is scheduled to stay at Balmoral through the evening, return to London and Buckingham Palace tomorrow. Certainly a day of enormously historic proportions in London and really across the United Kingdom and around the world. There are elaborate and elongated plans for 10 days of mourning. Our sister network Sky News in the United Kingdom began wall-to-wall coverage just as the BBC did at the lunchtime hour this afternoon. There was early word when the BBC One, the main broadcasting channel in Great Britain, went to rolling all news coverage, and the word from the royal doctors was a tone that we had never heard before, that it appeared the end was near, and indeed it was. Queen Elizabeth dead at 96. Let's join in progress now. Coverage from our sister network, Sky News in the United Kingdom.
We mark her death.
And just to repeat that statement released a short time ago by Buckingham Palace, that The Queen died peacefully at Balmoral this afternoon. The King and the Queen Consort will remain at Balmoral this evening and will return to London tomorrow. And Rhiannon Mills, our royal correspondent, is still with us. And of course, Rhiannon, this is the way things work in Britain, in the United Kingdom. With her death, we now have a king.
We do. We have a hereditary monarchy. And this, I think, is something that will potentially come as a shock to some across the country. As soon as Queen Elizabeth II took her last breath, we had a new king, and that is her son and heir, formerly the Prince of Wales, and now King Charles. We do wait to find out what name he takes. There is a potential that he may change his name to a different regnal name, but we await that announcement in the next hours, days to come. But in the coming days, we will see the pendulum swing in many ways between mourning the death of Queen Elizabeth II and the welcoming of a new king. We are going to see spectacular pageantry that many of us have never witnessed before. The Accession Council is where he will be made officially the new king, where he will be sworn in. That will gather at St James's Palace. We wait to see exactly when that will take place, but that will formally mark his succession, and we will witness him taking his oath, and it is at that moment that he will be proclaimed as king. I think what is striking is that at a time when most people would have retired, he is now stepping into a role that he's spent his entire life preparing for.
And indeed he has. We're interrupting Sky News coverage because we've just learned President Biden scheduled to speak in the next few seconds from the White House. Let's bring in our senior White House correspondent, Kayla Tausche, who's live there. Kayla, what have you learned?
Well, Shep, we know that President Biden was scheduled to speak at 1:45 on the U.S.'s fight against COVID-19 and vaccines. But now the press pool here at the White House is gathered for those remarks where the president is expected to address the passing of Queen Elizabeth II. The press secretary who closed out a briefing just a few moments ago said she didn't want to get ahead of what the president planned to say, but that the U.S.'s hearts and thoughts go out to the royal family and to all of those in the U.K. Of course, it is known as the special relationship between the U.S. and the U.K., the closest allies in the world. President Biden had met with the Queen on 3 occasions, first as a senator in 1982, most recently in 2021 following the G7 summit in Cornwall. At that meeting, he extended an invitation for the Queen to visit him at the White House. That's a visit that never materialized. But of course, Queen Elizabeth served for 70 years on the throne, spanning 14 presidents, 13 of whom she met. She witnessed the civil rights movement here in the United States, the end of the Cold War, the rise of protectionism, both in the UK with Brexit and here in the US, as well as, of course, the pandemic and the recent antagonism by Russia and China on the world stage. It was those 2 leaders, the 2 presidents of Russia and China, that the Queen asked President Biden for his views on during their last meeting. The president wouldn't say exactly what he shared with her. Earlier today, I asked the press secretary about how the president views the special relationship between the U.S. and the U.K. With a forthcoming transition in the monarchy, with Queen Elizabeth having served for 70 years, 1/3 of American history. I'm not sure if we have the response from the press secretary prepared for us to air right now, but she essentially underscored that the president and the White House believe that that relationship grew stronger in recent years, and that, of course, the president believes that that relationship will remain strong and remain special, of course, going forward. Recently, in the last decade or so, the Queen had said that it wasn't just the military and diplomatic ties that bound the U.S. and the U.K. together. It was shared views on loyalty, fair play, patriotism, and hard work. And of course, it is on those values that that tie will remain unbreakable. Shep.
Kayla Tausche live at the White House will return as the president speaks. It's 46 minutes past the hour now. This change in world circumstances might take them just a few minutes. As Queen Elizabeth II has died at the age of 96, King Charles' reign begins immediately, though coronation is a matter for later days. We do know that it's possible that King Charles may take another name, but Charles himself will be king. Our CNBC's Valerie Castro is gathering reaction as it pours in from around the world. While we wait for the president, Valerie, to you.
Shep, notably right now, we are actually still waiting for reaction from the Prime Minister, the British Prime Minister, Liz Truss. Earlier today, she issued a statement saying the whole country will be deeply concerned by the news from Buckingham Palace this lunchtime. My thoughts and the thoughts of the people across our United Kingdom are with Her Majesty the Queen and her family at this time. That was a statement that came out earlier today. Notably, there is still nothing new that has been posted. Tony Blair, the former prime minister, tweeted earlier today saying it is deeply concerning to hear today's news from Buckingham Palace. My thoughts and prayers are with Her Majesty the Queen and her family at this worrying time. Again, still no updated statements from those former leaders. Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, issued a statement earlier today as well. My thoughts and the thoughts of Canadians across the country are with Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II at this time. We're wishing her well and sending our best to the royal family. Again, we're still waiting for more statements to come in, more reaction. Earlier today, the Archbishop of Canterbury, who is the head of the Church of England, said, my prayers and the prayers of people across the Church of England and the nation are with Her Majesty the Queen today. May God's presence strengthen and comfort Her Majesty, her family, and those who are caring for her at Balmoral. Shep.
Thanks very much. CNBC's Valerie Castro there. I do want to let you know that Karine Jean-Pierre, the White House press secretary, spoke just a short time ago, and she gave sort of a message from the White House just before we learned that the Queen had died. Let's listen now as Karine Jean-Pierre spoke here in the last 30 minutes, or we will in just a moment. I've also just been given word that the British Prime Minister, the new Prime Minister, Liz Truss, will be speaking in London in just a short time. So one would guess that in the order of speaking, that likely Liz Truss might go first, and then President Biden. You can see the podium has been set up there outside number 10 Downing Street in London on yet another rainy day there. Back over to Kensington Palace, or to the palace there, where the throngs of people began arriving just after lunchtime. You can see the broad view as the rain fell through much of the day, now approaching 7 p.m. in Great Britain, British summertime. The authorities had said that everything was working according to plan. As you might imagine, for decades, there's been a plan for the passing of the Queen, all that would take place over a period of 10 days or so leading up to the coronation, which will take place about 10 days from now. First, though, the memorials that have been coming in, and on Sky News, a much different tone, of course, because in Great Britain, she was seen, as Sky News said earlier today, sort of as a granny. The BBC's royal commentator said people may have taken her for granted from time to time, may have not thought about the glue that she's been for this country since she was on the throne since the finish of World War II, but that now, at times like these, the British people are able to sit back and reflect on all that she has experienced. The 15 prime ministers now with Liz Truss coming into power, and the many presidents of the United States going back to Truman. You can see that they're set up for Liz Truss to speak. And while we wait, let's listen to Sky News. This is what the British are hearing on suppertime television this evening.
She talked about what it was like, that moment where she became queen, and the fact that, speaking about her father's death, there's a documentary called Elizabeth R. from 1990, and speaking about her father's death, she said, in a way, I didn't have an apprenticeship. My father died much too young, and it was all very sudden, taking on and making the best job you can. It's a question of maturing into something one has got used to doing and accepting the fact that here you are and it's all fate. And throughout that remarkable reign, we saw that she was always committed, despite the world changing around her, despite witnessing the most extraordinary political, social, economic change, she would continue to try and make sure that that institution was reacting to what was happening around her.
And just on the here and now, we understand that an announcement, a statement will be made by the Prime Minister in Downing Street very shortly. And let's just reflect on what an extraordinary week it has been in the history of the entirety of the United Kingdom. The passing of our head of a state after 70 years on the throne, 2 days after a change of Prime Minister. We really are in a moment of constitutional upheaval and transition, and this is the statement also posted formally on the gates of Buckingham Palace, where in the past, of course, that device has been used for much happier news. You'll be more familiar with it, I suppose, to announce the birth of royal babies over the year. This the saddest of news being confirmed on the gates of Buckingham Palace, that the Queen, I'll read it to you again, the Queen died peacefully at Balmoral this afternoon. The King and the Queen Consort will remain at Balmoral this evening and will return to London tomorrow. And we also caught a glimpse there, another sombre symbol of the flag fluttering at half-mast, the Union flag flying at half-mast above Buckingham Palace here in central London. And as I say, not too very far away from Buckingham Palace, over in Downing Street, that lectern, which just
you can see we're waiting for Liz Truss to arrive there at number 10 Downing Street. The coverage of Sky News in the United Kingdom, our sister network there. CNBC's Courtney Reagan has some context around the royal family, a royal watcher herself, as we mourn the loss of Queen Elizabeth. Courtney, to you.
Yeah, Shep, I just think this is a really historical day for all of us, really around the world. If you think about Queen Elizabeth, she became queen in 1952, was then coronated in 1953. And at that time, that was much more of a surprise than what we're experiencing now. Her father was quite young, and it wasn't really publicly known that he was unhealthy at the time. It was a surprise to her. She was in Africa at the time, became queen, and has been ever since, which means she has met with 15 prime ministers, starting with Winston Churchill, which really just seems like a historical figure, but was someone that she knew personally and politically, which I just find fascinating. 13 presidents, I believe, meeting all but LBJ during that time. And of course, the Queen came to the throne in a very interesting way. Yes, her father had passed away, and that was the way these things naturally pass. But he was only king because his brother had abdicated the throne in order to marry an American divorcee. Of course, since then, the rules have changed. But the Queen stayed very, very close to the way that things had always been done. She always chose the crown over family in many circumstances, which I can only imagine had to have been personally very difficult. But I think she felt a great sense of duty because of the role that she played, because of the choice that her father really was not given. And so I think she felt very compelled to follow the rules the way things had always been done. Now, as time went on, things did certainly change. She changed the different rules of succession so that now the eldest child of the reigning monarch would become king. Or king or queen. That does not necessarily play out in the line of succession, mainly because the firstborn and actually the only two children of Charles were male, and William's oldest child is also a male. But had William's oldest child been a female, she would have been the queen over another younger brother. So I think that there's just a lot that the Queen held on to with tradition, but over time began to loosen a little bit. And we can only wonder what Charles will be, if he is indeed King Charles, or perhaps goes by another name. and what he may change or keep the same. Obviously, considerably older than his mother when he takes over as sovereign. So there's just a lot of, I think, sadness going on around the world. I think she really came to be a very beloved figure. She changed the way that the monarch interacted with the public in a way that had not been done before that, and became much more of a public figure and someone that really was adored, figurehead or not. Yep.
Courtney Reagan, thanks very much. A little bit of what's to come now. We know from planning that was set well in advance of this that the royal family will announce plans for the Queen's funeral, which is expected to be held somewhere around 10 days from now. The Prime Minister will be the first member of the government to make a statement. We're expecting Prime Minister Liz Truss to do that in just a short time. And all other members of the government will be instructed not to comment until after the Prime Minister has spoken, which would explain why President Biden, we've just gotten word from the White House, will not be speaking as scheduled. Remember, he was to speak about 10 minutes ago on other matters, was going to shift his statements to messages of condolences from the United States, but is now following palace protocol to allow Liz Truss, the new prime minister, to make the first statement, and then a series of activities to go into place. The Minister of Defense will arrange for gun salutes to take place at all saluting stations across Great Britain and the United Kingdom. A national minute of silence will be announced at some point soon. The Prime Minister will hold an audience with the new king. The schedule would suggest that that would happen at 6 p.m. British time. King Charles then to deliver a statement to the nation. But of course, we're 3 minutes before 7 p.m. now, which leaves into question whether that sort of thing will happen tonight or in the morning. But having been in planning for this sort of thing, frankly, for a period of decades, I would guess and suspect that the Prime Minister will hold the audience with King Charles and that King Charles will deliver a broadcast to the nation sometime in the next few hours. All at the same time, there'll be a service of remembrance at St. Paul's Cathedral in the heart of London. The Prime Minister and a small number of senior ministers set to attend that service. It's planned to appear spontaneous, according to official documents, which were received by Politico just about 1 year ago now. And then tomorrow, on the day after the Queen's death, the Ascension Council, which includes senior government figures, will meet at St. James's Palace to proclaim King Charles the new sovereign. So much ahead as we mourn the passing of Queen Elizabeth at the age of 96. To hear the words King Charles and Queen Consort, such an abrupt change. Death comes so quickly, especially when considering that most of us alive today have not known a queen or a leader of Great Britain other than Queen Elizabeth. I think of my father, who's almost exactly her age, who has never known a queen other than this one, and now suddenly that part of Great Britain, and certainly the passing of the political torch, leaves them, as Sky News put it just a moment ago, at a period of great change. There is new reaction coming in as we're fast approaching 2 p.m. on the East Coast and 11 a.m. on the West Coast. Valerie Castro now in the CNBC Newsroom. Valerie, to you.
Shep, we're now starting to see some international reaction pouring in as a result of this news. The president of France, Emmanuel Macron, said Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II embodied the British nation's continuity and unity for over 70 years. I remember her as a friend of France, a kind-hearted queen who has left a lasting impression on her country and her century. Sheikh Mohammed, the ruler of Dubai, also issued a statement saying, "We join the world in mourning the passing of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, a global icon who represented the finest qualities of her nation and people. Her incredible lifetime of service and duty to the United Kingdom is unparalleled in our modern world." There are also some British celebrities that have been speaking out. J.K. Rowling, of course, the author of the Harry Potter series, issuing a statement saying, "Some may find the outpouring of British shock and grief at this moment quaint or odd, but millions felt affection and respect for the woman who uncomplainingly filled her constitutional role for 70 years. She went on to say most British people have never known another monarch. So she's been a thread winding through all our lives. She did her duty by the country right up until her dying hours and became an enduring positive symbol of Britain all over the world. She's earned her rest. Hashtag the Queen. And one last notable celebrity statement issued by Ozzy Osbourne. I mourn with my country the passing of our greatest queen. With a heavy heart, I say it is devastating the thought of England without Queen Elizabeth II. Shep.
Valerie Castro, thanks very much. Let's get back to the White House now, where there's been a change in plans for the president. Our senior White House correspondent, Kayla Tausche, standing by live there now. Kayla?
Shep, the pool that had been gathered for the president's pre-scheduled remarks has dispersed, awaiting any statement from the president, as you note, to come after the prime minister herself speaks from 10 Downing. Here at the White House, we're waiting to see those flags get moved to half-staff, as they so often do when there is a passing of this significance. Just down Pennsylvania Avenue, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has ordered flags there to be flown at half-mast, and they are already being done so there. Of course, we are continuing to get new news about what transpired here at the White House throughout the day, as the president was kept abreast of the Queen's condition, which deteriorated throughout the day. NBC News is reporting that President Biden was informed of the Queen's passing by his top aides, including Kate Bedingfield, who leads his communications, his chief of staff, Ron Klain, and one of his top political advisors, Mike Donnellan, and that the meeting in the Oval Office where the president was informed, unfortunately, the president said he was not surprised. He had been participating in a video conference early in the day with several Western allies, where they had agreed on and announced a new $675 million package from the U.S. in security assistance to Ukraine. And NBC's Mike Memoli reports that, according to his sources, that President Biden said that the Prime Minister, Liz Truss, abruptly left that video conference, which was why the president was not surprised to learn of the Queen's passing. Now, earlier today, I asked the press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, what would happen to the special relationship between the U.S. and the U.K. as the monarchy transitions. She said at that time, before the Queen's passing had been announced, she did not want to engage in hypotheticals, but she said the relationship will remain strong. Here's the press secretary.
Our hearts and our thoughts go to the family members of the Queen, goes to the people of the United Kingdom. I don't want to get ahead of what the president is going to say. I want him to, from you all, to hear from him first, and so I don't want to get ahead of that. And I said this earlier, our relationship with the people of the United Kingdom, and this is something that the president has said himself, has grown stronger and stronger. And it is the United Kingdom is one of our closest allies. And again, our hearts go to the people of the United Kingdom, to the Queen, and to her family.
Jean-Pierre said President Biden had last had an audience with the Queen in June 2021 after attending the G7 summit in Cornwall. Shep.
Kayla, approximately 10 days of mourning before a funeral, or that was the announced plan prior to today. Do we have a set in stone understanding of what an American delegation would look like, who will be representing, or is that a matter for discussion over the days ahead?
Well, it's certainly a matter of discussion for the days ahead, but there has not been a passing of this gravity in recent decades. The Queen had reigned for 70 years, for 1/3 of American history, through 14 president's terms. So certainly a passing of this magnitude is not something that the U.S. has had to grapple with. It is expected that a delegation would include officials at the highest levels of government, though when asked multiple times today whether the president himself would be making that trip, the press secretary demurred at that time. Shep.
Thanks very much. Kayla Tausche live for us at the White House. It's my understanding that the new king has just released a statement. And as he did, as you might imagine, it overloaded, apparently, the systems which transmit it. I can tell you this, that President Zelensky of Ukraine has just issued a statement just a short time ago. President Zelensky wrote, "It is with deep sadness that we learned of the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. On behalf of the Ukrainian people," Zelensky said, "we extend sincere condolences to the royal family, the entire United Kingdom, and the Commonwealth over this irreparable loss. Our thoughts and prayers are with you," said President Zelensky. I've now just gotten the statement from His Majesty the King, and I'll read that now. This was Dateline, Buckingham Palace, a statement from His Majesty the King at the time of the Queen's death. "The death of my beloved mother, Her Majesty the Queen, is a moment of greatest sadness for me and all members of my family. We mourn profoundly the passing of a cherished sovereign and a much-loved mother. I know her loss will be deeply felt throughout the country, the realms, and the Commonwealth, and by countless people around the world. During this period of mourning and change, my family and I will be comforted and sustained by our knowledge of the respect and deep affection in which the Queen was so widely held." Signed this Thursday, 8th of September, 2022, by the King of England. It is hard to believe, after all these years, that now it has come to this. Kayla Tausche is at the White House. We wait for Liz Truss, who, by order and plan, is the first to make a statement, and then a series of matters comes next. What do we know about what we're expecting from Liz Truss, and then when the White House will have something to say?
Well, certainly you can imagine, Shep, that the Prime Minister is gathering her thoughts and has been throughout the day. Brand new to office, she received the blessing of the Queen just days ago to take the office of Prime Minister when she visited with the Queen at Balmoral. She had been presenting her energy plan in Parliament and fielding a lot of very critical questions from lawmakers there when she received the news earlier today, and then, of course, participated in that video conference this morning with Western allies where they agreed upon a new coordinated package of security assistance to Ukraine. And then, according to NBC News, abruptly left that video conference conceivably upon learning the news of the Queen's passing. Certainly when you see leaders step up to the podium at a moment like this, they will be expected to assure a nation in mourning that the path forward will be one of stability and one of leadership. Of course, we can't know exactly what is in her head during such an incredible moment for this country with a dramatic change at the top. We're now seeing the Prime Minister stepping to the podium outside 10 Downing.
We are all devastated by the news that we have just heard from Balmoral. The death of Her Majesty the Queen is a huge shock to the nation and to the world. Queen Elizabeth II was the rock on which modern Britain was built. Our country has grown and flourished under her reign. Britain is the great country it is today because of her. She ascended the throne just after the Second World War. She championed the development of the Commonwealth from a small group of 7 countries to a family of 56 nations, spanning every continent of the world. We are now a modern, thriving, dynamic nation. Through thick and thin, Queen Elizabeth II provided us with the stability and the strength that we needed. She was the very spirit of Great Britain, and that spirit will endure. She has been our longest ever reigning monarch. It's an extraordinary achievement to have presided with such dignity and grace for 70 years. Her life of service stretched beyond most of our living memories. In return, she was loved and admired by the people in the United Kingdom and all around the world. She has been a personal inspiration to me and to many Britons. Her devotion to duty is an example to us all. Earlier this week, at 96, she remained determined to carry out her duties as she appointed me as her 15th Prime Minister. Throughout her life, she's visited more than 100 countries, and she has touched the lives of millions around the world. In the difficult days ahead, we will come together with our friends across the United Kingdom, the Commonwealth and the world.
Well, these sorts of things happen from time to time. It's unfortunate when they happen at this time. But Liz Truss, who's in her 4th day now as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom after winning a battle within the Conservative Party with Rishi Sunak, the 2 leading candidates, members of the party across Great Britain, voted. And she's speaking again now. Let's listen.
With the King's family, we mourn the loss of his mother. And as we mourn, we must come together as a people to support him, to help him bear the awesome responsibility that he now carries for us all. We offer him our loyalty and devotion, just as his mother devoted so much to so many for so long. And with the passing of the second Elizabethan age, we usher in a new era in the magnificent history of our great country, exactly as Her Majesty would have wished, by saying the words, "God save the King."
Well, there you have it. Liz Truss, the British Prime Minister, speaking just outside number 10 Downing Street. God save the King. We're now beginning to get reactions in from across Great Britain and beyond, including the Archbishop of Canterbury, who has just spoken. Our Valerie Castro is live with that now. Valerie?
Shep, the Archbishop, the leader of the Church of England, issued a lengthy statement, about a page and a half. I'll just read portions of it to you. It says, "It is with profound sadness that I join the nation, the Commonwealth, and the world in mourning the death of Her late Majesty, the Queen. My prayers are with the King and the royal family. May God draw near them and comfort them in the days, weeks, and months ahead." And later on in the statement, he made reference to the pandemic, saying, "In the darkest days of the coronavirus pandemic, the late Queen spoke powerfully of the light that no darkness can overcome. As she had done before, she reminded us of the deep truth about ourselves. We are a people of hope who care for one another. Even as the late Queen mourned the loss of her beloved husband, Prince Philip, we saw once again evidence of her courage, resilience, and instinct for putting the needs of others first, all signs of a deeply rooted Christian faith." He ended this statement briefly saying, "May Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II rest in peace and rise in glory." Shep.
Valerie Castro, thanks very much. I've been watching the coverage of Sky News, our sister network in the UK, excuse me, throughout much of the morning and now early afternoon, and was struck by those who had witnessed the Queen over the past few weeks, talking of her walking her corgis in Scotland there, as she has been seen to do. We've no talk of riding ponies, but certainly picnicking with her lady-in-waiting, said to have been in quite good spirits. And then it appears from the reporting of Sky News that Monday was something of a difficult day. After all, she had just spoken with the outgoing Prime Minister, welcoming Liz Truss. The incoming Prime Minister did so in Scotland at Balmoral rather than at the palace. As she was summering there, that was certainly a break from tradition, a break from protocol. But then after that long day on Monday, the doctors had said that Queen Elizabeth needed her rest and canceled a virtual meeting that was scheduled to happen yesterday. And then this morning, around noontime, 12:30 actually, London time, the doctors said that they were concerned for her health, and then a series of events. We don't yet know the time of her passing, but we do know that there was a series of events which had to take place. Some 20 phone calls notifying of heads of state, of members of leadership across the country, members of the royal family, the extended royal family, and others. And then putting into place a series of events which will take place both this evening there in Great Britain and then over the next 10 days. There has been a lot to come together over the last few hours, and now the 10-day period of mourning, which our friends at Sky News are discussing now. Let's dip into their coverage for just a moment.
And the issue, I know it's a minor issue at this time, Rhiannon, in some of the great scheme of things, the issue of the regnal name still not necessarily decided.
No, it's not entirely clear, and we did hear Liz Truss there referring to the new king as King Charles III, but, and this might come as a surprise to some, there is a possibility that he could use one of his other names, as we have seen from other past sovereigns. So we wait for official confirmation on the name that he will definitely go by. And I think that is also going to be the case when it comes to what we see unfold over the next 10 days or so. We have already seen some of the formalities that we would have anticipated. So, for example, the Union flags flying at half-mast. We've also seen the announcement being put on the gates there, announcing the sad passing of Queen Elizabeth II. But we wait to see exactly how the next few days will pan out. But what we can see is that already the transition has seamlessly happened. And I think for some that will compound the shock. It's hard to take in some ways already, the fact that we are talking about the passing of a much loved head of state after only seeing her a couple of days ago carrying out her duties. But also now we do have a new monarch, and already he wanted to make sure that he was able to send this message to people across the country and the Commonwealth. And it's a very warm message where he talks about the death of his beloved mother and how the love and respect with which she was held across the country is really going to comfort and sustain the rest of the family. But in the coming days, we will see this transition happen seamlessly in terms of his succession being officially confirmed at the Accession Council. Interestingly, also within the message explaining and announcing her death, it talked about how the King and the Queen Consort will travel to London. And that was something that the Queen very clearly expressed in her Accession Day message at the start of the year, when it came to, I think, trying to future-proof the monarchy, to try and stop the unnecessary questions that some may think were unnecessary on the event of her death. And one of those was going to be how the Duchess of Cornwall, Camilla, should be referred to. Because you have to remember that when the Prince of Wales and Camilla got married, it was expressed that she would become Princess Consort at the time, because there was a sensitivity, of course, around that relationship. In the Queen's Accession Day message this year, she very clearly showed her support and affection for Camilla, saying she should be a future Queen Consort. She appreciated how much of a support Camilla is and will continue to be, especially in the coming days and weeks, for her son as he takes over this role. So already we see in what's happening now the impact that Queen Elizabeth II had when it came to continuing to shape how the future of the monarchy is going to look.
Rhiannon, many thanks. Let's cross now to our political editor, Beth Ribby. Beth, we just heard a statement.
King Charles and Queen Consort will be at some point tonight. We expect King Charles to make a statement. If not tonight, tomorrow morning. He's already released the paper statement. We're expecting something from the microphones either tonight in Britain or tomorrow morning their time. For now, over to Courtney Reagan. For just a moment, the next 10 days will be difficult and elongated and sorrowful across that country.
Absolutely. But to be sure, of course, Shep, they have been planned for some time. It was widely known that when the Queen did die, that the message would be London Bridge, or more specifically, London Bridge is down, and that her private secretary would be the one to deliver that message to the Prime Minister. It was also widely believed that the BBC RAT system, a sort of radio alert system that's been in place since the 1930s, would be used to help disseminate that message. I don't know if that is what happened, but that was at least part of that plan, this 10-day plan. Today, September 8th, the day that the Queen died, will be referred to as D-Day, and then tomorrow will be D+1, D+2, and so on until you get to those 10 days. Of course, the Queen was the head of state for 15 different governments, and there are 36 Commonwealth nations that she was more or less a figurehead for. They will also be mourning her death and marking it in some very official way in the coming days. There will be most likely a four-nation tour by the King. Again, unclear if he will be known as King Charles, but there are many things that are a part of this plan that we expect to commence. Perhaps some things will change because this plan most likely was set in place some time ago when it was learned about by some reporters and some information was released to the public. So we'll have to see what happens. But this is an unprecedented event. This is historic. We have not seen this, Shep, to your point, in our lifetimes and in some cases in our parents' lifetime. She has been the reigning monarch since 1952 when her father died in 1953 when she was officially coronated. And that coronation did take more time than we expect this one to take, as the death of the Queen's father was a bit more unexpected. Shep.
Courtney Reagan, thanks so much. Of course, we'll have a complete wrap and look ahead tonight on the news, 7 o'clock Eastern Time, 6 Central. Coverage continues now on CNBC.com, on our sister network MSNBC, on satellite and cable, and of course on our streaming service, NBC News Now. That's online around the world. I'm Shepard Smith. Right after this, Power Lunch is next on CNBC, First in Business Worldwide.